which is fantastic. I'll just repeat what I've said. Apologies for that. Welcome to the Sikhi and AI webinar. My name is Pravleen Kaur and I'm from Carlos Foundation. And Carlos Foundation, you might have heard of, are very popular apps such as Sundar Gutka. We've got Sikhi to the Max desktop. There's also My First Gutka and many more apps to connect us with Sikhi. We've also got Prabdev Singh, who is a co-host with us. And he is a part of the board for Carlos Foundation as well, and will be aiding in joining in with us, and to just introduce some of the people that have joined us, leading professionals who we really appreciate, are in a couple of different time zones as well, and we appreciate they've joined us today. So we've got Arvinder Singh, who is an entrepreneur and technology leader, and he stands at the intersection of technology and culture, championing the inclusion of ethnic cultures and language in AI with over 15 years of pioneering experience. Arvinder Singh has adeptly navigated the realms of technology development and strategic product management. So his latest work emphasized the critical role of ethnic culture and linguistic representation in shaping the evolution of AI, highlighting both the challenges and unparalleled opportunities this intersection presents. We've also got Balvinder Kaur Penji with us, who is a passionate technologist, a creative educator, a woman in tech champion. She's also a mother, and she's also on the Carlos Foundation board. She loves touching the hearts of young individuals through immersive storytelling. She is the CTO at Climate Tech startup. She has experience launching products that use AI. She is a software engineering degree from the Indian Institute of Technology. We've also got Mantheg Singh with us, who is the CTO, and he's passionate about AI and tech, and has over 15 years of hands-on experience from everything from data operations to analytics to Sikh tech projects. And he's eager to share these real-world insights and experiences with others. And we've also got the Sam Singh, who is an international speaker on the Sikh faith, having studied the teachings for over 25 years. He has delivered lectures, seminars, and workshops on Sikh spirituality and concepts worldwide. A former global director of software development, he has created various innovative resources about the faith, including the world's first online desktop search engine for Sikh scriptures. He is also the author of 3 books on Sikh spirituality, which is Why Am I Here?, the Sikhi Marriage Handbook, and My Little Book of Spiritual Wisdom. So we are really hoping to touch on the topics and questions of AI today. We will be going through different questions throughout. Feel free to send your questions or comments or thoughts on the chat. And at the end of the webinar, we will be addressing some of them. And if there are anything else, if anything happens during the live, please feel free to comment and we'll see them. And I'll let Pravdev Paji start with the first question for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Pravleen. That was great. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So actually, I wanted to start off by asking a question to everybody on the panel. If you could just tell us a little bit about your connection to Sikhi and technology, and maybe if there's any specific application, any Sikhi project that you have worked on, please tell us about that. Maybe Balvinder Penji, will start with you.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I've been blessed to be associated with Carlos Foundation since 2018, and I have been engaged with a lot of these key products that the foundation builds. But I am more of a 0 to 1 person, and I love working on children's stuff. So besides the children's books, which are not technology, but we're working on a new product which will help our children, especially the ones who are not growing up in Punjab, to learn Punjabi. So that is one of the new things we are working on, and we will launch soon. It's called Shabdabli.
Awesome. Arvinder Singh, next, over to you.
Vaheguru Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So I've been associated with a few different projects for the last 10 to 15 years. One of the projects that I've been associated with right from my college days is a Punjabi open source group, which was a volunteer group which made sure that the representation of Gurmukhi script within the open source space. There are contributions that continue to go in. Those include sometimes lobbying, Unicode. Those might require contribution to CLDR, which is the Common Local Data Repository, from which a lot of the mobile and operating mobile and Linux operating system, open source operating systems draw their translation strings from. We've done a few other projects. For example, the translation of Linux in Punjabi, the translation of Firefox browser in Punjabi, and contribution to Ruby on Rails, LaTeX. So most of my work typically has been in that space, in the script and Punjabi language space. And over the years, I have helped wherever I can to other organizations who need help in that space.
Thank you so much. Mantik Singh, would love to hear from you as well. I know you've been very active in the scene for a very long time, so please tell us about your past and some inspiring Sikh projects that you worked on.
Thank you very much, Fadi. I've been blessed to be with Sikh my whole life and also technology my whole life. So in some ways, it feels a little interactively linked there. I just realized based on what my other things said, I'm pretty sure I talked to him on IRC about 15 years ago on the Punjabi Freenet channel. So we'll have to catch up a little bit later about that. Obviously in recent times, love spending my free time here with the Khalid Foundation, working on Sikhi and Artificial and related projects. I know we'll talk a little bit later about the semantic search feature that we just launched on the Sikhi website. Before that, lots of local and small Punjabi and Sikhi projects, to back in the day, the first Pocket PC version of having knit them on your Windows Pocket PC, to hacking on Python, same things, original Sikhi to the max, to extract the database for my own uses as a teenager, and everything in between.
Excellent. So I hear there's some echo, and we'll try to figure out what's going on and if that's a problem with everybody. But by the same thing, we would love to hear from you as well. I know Praveen already alluded to the early seva that you've done, that I've been inspired by a lot. We'd love to hear about your background, some of the projects that you worked on.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. And I'll be very quick, obviously, don't waste loads of time. But the Sikhi to the Max started in 1999, went online in 2000. And so that started off as just a search. And then it moved on to being used in Kirtans and things. And PDA, the first PDA version, I think, from Jajar Singh in UK, he helped make the first mobile app, if you like, with Gurbani on it. That was shortly after that. But over and above that, I mean, just recently, just completed a voice search on the mobile app as well, so that will be released shortly. The other stuff I've been working on, obviously books and things, but I've been Barjarik since '95. Been going around the world, I think, and so from a Sikhi perspective, been doing other apps too, like learning Gurmukhi and things like that. But just recently, I've been doing more around with the Sikh Recovery Network with alcoholics in Punjabi, alcoholics and things. I'm working on the Sikhi 12 steps to stop people drinking and things like that. So different things going on. Enlightenment course as well. Sikhi Enlightenment course is something we've done worldwide. Gurmat Chanan course in Punjabi as well. So I won't bore you with anything else.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll start with Kanji. I'd love to ask you a question. So as a board member of Khalid Foundation, tell us how do you view the impact of AI on the products that Khalid Foundation builds?
That's a great question. So just from a personality standpoint, I tend to be very optimistic, and I don't take changes in a negative perspective, and that applies here too. Anytime there is new disruptive technology, whether it was electricity or the internet or mobile or even fire, right? Or nuclear, right? There's always good uses and bad uses. I think using everything that AI has unleashed, it's important for us to be on top of it. So experimenting constantly, but then being involved in learning how to uh, harness the power as well as uh, be participants, active participants in building guardrails. There's so many use cases that we could just we could use and uncover with the ability that we have. So I think just being very actively involved and being and also helping spread education, because there's a lot of fear involved with it. So I think College Foundation has a big role to play here.
Excellent. I think Prableen is busy checking out why there's an echo, so I will let her deal with that. I'm going to ask a question to Arvinder Paji. So, Paji, would you like to give us a perspective of how other communities outside of Sikhi are leveraging technologies such as AI and other emerging technologies? And what do you think, as a community, the Khalsa Panth Sikhs, what can we learn from them, their experiences?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of activity, happening in this space, and a lot of other faith-based communities are also leveraging this. Last year there was a AI in church hackathon that happened in Boulder. There were some very interesting applications that were seen there. For example, chatbots, for Bible study in the Christian communities that is happening. Creating. There's something called kiddie chisms, which is about creating spiritual lessons for kids. Using illustrations, using large language models trained on graphic data, creating customized, growth plans. Obviously, for social media, LLMs have been a huge leverage for the group. So we have seen a lot of the use of AI in enhancing both the voice as well as interpretations without spending much resources, and it comes with its own risks. Within the Sikh community, we can use the AI, but the recent proliferation of AIs has been much largely in the large language model space. It can be around similar sort of spaces, but I also wanted to point out what all is sort of required, to be able to do that. We need large corpus data made available. We need the ecosystem that is required to develop much of these tools. For example, even script representation. We still don't have. We still have very limited fonts which have representation of Tiber Swar, Latviank, and Pratham Gurmukhi Akkar and all of that. So there's a lot happening in the space, a lot that can be done, and
with the emergence of tools like ChatGPT and generative AI in general, I know that it's been there, but it really came to the fore with ChatGPT being launched about 18 or so months ago. And then a lot of Sikh developers starting to utilize OpenAI based APIs to develop their own Sikhi chatbots, right? I know that's a key area that we wanted to focus on today, so I'll go into that. So, Praiter, same thing, would love to ask you, how can we ensure that AI applications in Sikhi respect the sanctity and authenticity of Gurbani, right? Like, how do we ensure when these chatbots are providing responses in Gurmukhi, there's no Kanchi Bani that comes out as a response, right? And in general, if you can just talk about your own experiences and what are some questions that we need to take as we work with these tools today?
Sure. I think when it comes to using, I have used it quite a lot, AI actually, in terms of like ChatGPT and things to kind of see how it responds to Gurmat type questions. And obviously that's a very broad database in terms of ChatGPT at the moment, and that's not the way to do it. But it does some wacko things sometimes. It's just crazy stuff. In terms of the Kachi Bani, it has written Gurbani. It's written lines in Gurmukhi that are absolutely wrong, where it's mishmashed things together. So that's a very, very dangerous area. Not just from trying to do that. It's just from the Sikh traditions, to create Kachi Pangti and things like that. That Guruji, you obey Mukh from the Panth for things like that. So if you've got an AI engine doing it, it's not a good thing. Just in terms of the benefits and positives of it, it does some amazing summaries sometimes. If you want a summary of a Siddhant, let's say, I found it to be quite good in that area. When you start going into the detail of understanding Gurbani, it doesn't do Gurbani justice. So I'll give you an example. Like I was doing certain shabds like Udo na kaga kare, bega miliji apne ram pyare, and I'm trying to drill into what is the crow metaphor. What's it trying to say? And it just got it way off. It's talking about Egyptians and all sorts of things, and about black crows being bad luck and the rest of it. But really, the Shabad is about Bache playing a game, and they're trying to make the crow fly away in India. And if the crow flies away, Pranaya, so Kabirji is using that as a metaphor to say, "Dono kaga kare to be mere vikaran da kaan jehdi hegi vikaran di o ud jave te mera prana aa jave na hirde vich prakash ho jave." So it doesn't understand those kind of things, and I think it's so respecting of Gurbani. If we start taking those responses that we get from AI engines as the gospel, if I put that in quotes, it's actually it's not the right way to think about it. The only point I want to make here, because I think I could do a whole hour on this, but I will I just want to cut it short, is that so we've got to always understand Jiri Gurbani da satkara, technology always reduces the satkar of Gurbani. This is just the nature of distribution of Gurbani and the way those things happen. So for instance, I'll give you an example. When we listen to Kirtan, it's great to be able to see Kirtan being recorded and put up on the internet. But the way that Kirtan's consumed, and I do watch my family and other people consume that Kirtan, the Kirtan's not consumed correctly, So for instance, you wouldn't sit in Maharaj Darbar eating a bowl of cereal while you're listening to Kirtan in the bar, and if there's a noise outside, you don't go and check out the window in the Gurdwara. But it's just the fact that it's there, it's a supplement to Bhagati. It's not Bhagati, and it's the same with Nityanim. Sikhi to the max. Hopefully I'm allowed to talk about that. What the intention was of Sikhi to the max. It certainly wasn't. I didn't think it would be a good kahana, and other things like that. So obviously that's in the Sikhi to the max application too. Its ability to be able to do bar, but I wouldn't I wouldn't say that it should be that shouldn't be your default for how you do part. And the reason why I say things like that is the jogati around in Sikhi changes when technology gets involved. So, for instance, in terms of Nithanim, obviously I learned my Nithanim from a gudka, and a gudka is kept in a high place. Gudka, you touch it with washed hands, and you have a Panji Shanan before you use it. You do Bishai before you sit down. And so you're doing proper satkar of the gudka. Gudka nal Gurbani can't sheti ho jandi hai. With a phone, it doesn't, and because it's just the placement on the gudka angs and things like that. So everything that we do, it has it has an effect. AI is going to be very similar in that if we're trying to use it for the understanding of Gurmat and Gurbani, that is not our tradition. So even look, Sikhi to the max is a set of data points, it's a set of data points. And you could do some searches and you could find things, but that's not how a guru really wanted us to consume Gurbani either. We consume Gurbani by going to Gurmukhs. Gurmukhs have that Bani Hirdev Basaiyo Hundi Bani, and then a Gurmukh will tell you that Bani, and it has a piercing effect on your Sikhi. Reading something off a screen and all the rest of it, Tika, that's a supplementary way of doing things like that. But that's my more traditional approach to technology, is that even though we may have been doing those things for many years, how we start consuming and using technology to understand and certainly change ourselves spiritually, it's important that we do those kind of delineations between tradition and
Hanji, sounds good. Faisal, I'll come back to you in just a minute because I want to follow up on this conversation. But I'm going to go over to Mandeep Virji. So, Virji, I know you are a tech enthusiast, right? So you're working with new technology, right? Sikhi technology, non-Sikh technology. I know that's what you do, right, day to day. I wanted to ask you, so building on top of Paiter Singh's response about Kachi Bani and that issue, can you chime in and provide some context around, some of these early recent Sikh GPT examples, right? Like that you've seen out there in the wild. I know there have been many of them. What could they have done better to ensure that, the Kachi Bani doesn't creep into the responses? Could you talk about some of that from the technology aspect?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So, fortunately or unfortunately, we actually haven't seen the launch of any really true AI products focused on Sikhi. We've seen things like Sikhi GPT, non-GPT, these sort of things, which again, fortunately or unfortunately, are really just very thin wrappers around ChatGPT at this point. And so, to directly answer your question on, what can we do to add those guardrails, add those safeguards that, Arindapaji was talking about is, well, first of all, we actually have to do some actual development to build an AI product as well first, right? Just putting a thin wrapper on OpenAI, on ChatGPT, definitely is not going to get it. And I'm sure all users of ChatGPT have seen it when it's gone off the rails, where it's made up things, where it writes things that doesn't make sense, because at the core of it, what these large language models are really just really good autocomplete based on data sets that it's already seen. So unless we're feeding it very focused data on the based on the type of things that we want to get out of it, we're not going to get anything good at it. Garbage in, garbage out, number one. And number two, we really have to put in the effort to add those guardrails to guide these large language models or other machine learning models or all these other AI tools to really understand kind of what is it the output that we care about. And so, of course, Kachi Bani is going to be the output of this, because what's going in is just a conflagration of what's on the internet at this point.
Yeah, there's a question from one of the viewers as well, talking about hallucinations. Can you talk about the impact of hallucination, right? Like, what are some of the examples? Not maybe going into the actual examples, but how often do these guardrails, even ChatGPT has guardrails. I know other developers have put in some of their own guardrails, but how easy is it for somebody to actually go in and avoid those guardrails?
Yeah, so if you're building a product that's just a thin wrapper on ChatGPT, it's very difficult, right? So you as a developer who are consuming the Open API tooling, the Open API, actually have very little control of what that is going to give you out. You have some control on what directions you give. You have some control on kind of what prompt you can develop through it. But as far as controlling the actual output, you have very little. So the best things you can do if you're only building around ChatGPT specifically is to build some tooling to look at the output before you return it to the user. Maybe strip out any kachibani or anything that you can do it. There are methodologies where you take that response, you feed it back into ChatGPT, try to get it to be a little bit better in that way. But as I mentioned, you really don't have a very tight control. On the other hand, if you're building your own kind of AI, your own language model, your own kind of data set to feed into this, you actually do have a fair amount of control. But as we've seen, that's a significant effort, there's a significant investment, and we haven't seen any Sikhi-focused products that have put that investment in yet.
Sounds good. So actually, I'm going to go back to Paita's same thing for a minute. So Paita, going back to the whole conversation around Kachibani, putting aside technology, can you talk us through some of the historical examples, right? Like Jithe Kachibani was shunned, right? Like what was the impact of that in Sikh history? If you go back to the times of Guru Sahib and other historical examples that you might want to share, we'd love to hear about that, right? Like, because we've seen so many examples, so many different applications come out over the recent few months, recent 6 to 9 months, and there have been a lot of hallucinations. And like you were saying, these applications, they're giving out responses which look like it's actually Gurbani, right? Like I've seen some examples where even the numbering system is actually very accurate, right? Like it'll go through like a whole stanza, and at the end like you'll have like, okay, ithe muk gaya, ithe nawa stanza shuru ho gaya. So like it looks like Gurbani, but when you actually are reading it, you're like, actually I've never seen this shabad in the past, right? For me, for example, I wouldn't say like I've been a Sikh for a very long time, but I've been blessed, right? I've been blessed for a long time to be in Sangat of Gur Sikhs. So I recognize a lot of shabads, right? And then anytime I come across a new shabad, I'm like, is this actually like, what does this mean? And is this even Barney? And there are actually tools out there that let you check GPT responses, right? Like ChatGPT is one of them. But let's put aside technology for a minute and just talk about the impact of Kachibani and some historical lessons that we can learn from it. Just so as we are working on Sikh technology and applications, we can keep that in mind, right? The Gurbani sanctity in mind.
Hanji, the main example is Ram Rai. The example where Ram Rai went to Aurangzeb's darbar, when he was questioned, he out of fear or chanchalta, whatever you want to call it, he changed the Pangti pe mitti Musalman ki pede pai kumyar, he changed to mitti baiman ki, and he said he's not talking about Musalman. And even if he did the arth of that, but it wasn't offensive to Musalman what Guru Sahib was saying. But where Guru Sahib was talking about the mitti where they're buried, which chikni ho jandi mitti, and Guru Sahib said when you use that, you can use it for pottery, and that's where the potters go and get their pottery mitti from. It's from the graveyards. And he says, and Maharaj if the soul is there, they'll chika marta hoga when they're making the pots out of it. So there Maharaj ne ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਤਾ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬੇਮੁਖ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਪੰਥ ਤੋਂ, and you can't ਉਹਨਾਂ ਰੋਟੀ ਬੇਟੀ ਦੀ ਸਾਂਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੁਣ, ਨਾ? So obviously it's a very, very serious thing when we talk about changing the akhar of Gurbani, but I think that the creation of scripture like that through AI is obviously nothing people are intending to do, and I think that could all be filtered out. Or I think there still are other issues around AI, outside of the Kachibani part.
Right, AI biases, right? Like that's a huge issue when it comes to AI transparency. So there's a huge discussion we can have on that. But I want to ask you, since I have you unmuted, about Gurbani interpretations, right? So you mentioned earlier that you've seen that at a high level, the response that these large language models they provide, it seems good enough. But when you want to go deeper, at that point, like it doesn't make sense, right? Like you mentioned the Udona Kagakari example. So, Paisa, what would you say? Actually, let me rephrase this in a way. So, anytime we've had Gurbani interpretation done, right? Like there are many who have done it historically, Pavi Singh Ji, Professor Sahib Singh Ji, and there are other examples as well. But now, right, like those were respected Gursikhs. But now you have AI doing Gurbani interpretation, and previously you would also have like, anytime somebody writes a book, they would give a copy to the Param Prachar committee within the SGPC to get their approval, right? Is this okay? Is this okay to publish, right? And they have their own board that does reviews. But now you have this AI, which is ever evolving. As you have more data, it's able to make more inferences, it's able to give more responses. So there's actually no one authority that is able to look into the responses. So how should we see this aspect of technology from the Sikhi lens?
So the interpretation part and translation part is an interesting area, and I think even with Sikhi to the max, we added Gyani Harban Singh's, one of the stick if you go to learn more. The reason why that was added was because it's a nirna. The nirna work that Gyani Harban Singh did is actually an amazing piece of work where he's looked at translations and said, well, these translations kind of don't make sense because of this, or it does make sense because of this. And he's done some broad research there. That's a good piece of work, and I think that's the part that really needs to be in an AI data source in terms of when interpretations are made of Gurbani. So the Panth hasn't done enough. It's ironic. I was at Fatehgarh last year, and because they got an institution there for research, and I was saying to them, this is before ChatGPT came out. I said, you haven't got enough research, you haven't got enough data on the internet. They're going to scrape and they're going to start inferring about Sikhi from there. And unfortunately, it already happened now. And so we need to do. There needs to be a lot more around, the actual. I could go through shabs and things, but my other concern is it's not just about the correct translation. It's how an AI engine gives you instructs you. So, for instance, I was looking at how ChatGPT is flawed in terms of there's a Science Direct research that they've written a paper about, asking it about things like drowning, terror attacks, and etc. Some disasters, and what are the instructions, like driving with a phone, what are the instructions, and it misses key detail out sometimes, and that's that's critical. It's critical information. So when Gurbani starts talking about specific things like "Kyo na marije, jira na dije, jasho paya vidana," Gurbani is saying to mari kyo nahi, Well, I don't want AI engine telling someone asks AI, tells their problems, and it says, your guru saying commit suicide, and because it's not saying that, is it? It's telling you the home menu menu. And so it's got, even when you go off, ChatGPT has still got a lot of some restrictions and some parameters. It doesn't say silly things all the time, or a lot of the time, I would say. Even it does try to give a Sikhi message and say that the guru's message is around this. So when you're going away from that, all of those restrictions and things have to all be reconsidered in an AI engine very carefully.
Right. That makes sense. So, Arvinder, I'm going to go over to you if you could unmute. There are actually two questions that I want to ask you. Number one is, how do you see these developments in terms of AI, and what could be done by Sikh developers to ensure we are keeping respect for Gurbani and Panthic spirit in mind? I know Mantekviji already responded to this, but if you could add on top of that, what could be done by Sikh developers to ensure they are keeping respect of Gurbani in mind, especially the Panthic spirit as well, right? So let's start with that, and then there's another follow-up question that I want to ask.
Sure. First of all, I also want to comment on one of the things that Darsham Veerji said, he said it beautifully, like, that eventually our journey should be to get to, the reading the Bani from Gurkha. And I think it's just like, calligraphy, you start with anything, and then eventually, start to look at the tools and then the beauty that comes out of it. So thank you for pointing that out. In terms of the question, Prabhu Singh, Veer, that you asked, I think for the developers, we can, first of all, we have to segment it, in as, Muntek Veer earlier mentioned as well. The development that we are doing in the public large language models or public applications, and what we are doing with our own custom LLM models, and also how do we want to use them, right? For the Gurbani specific, use cases, I think, we should start to look at LLMs for only query generation, and not necessarily for and keep training large language models on Gurbani, like separate, not use that, and basically just use that for generating queries, for understanding the context of the question that the user is asking, and then use those queries to directly query databases like BaniDB, Sikhi to the max, to actually generate. So we have some sort of standard of how we want to query, Gurbani in our applications. In terms of the other uses, right, in Sikh education, AI in Sikh education, we can use things like, RAGs to further provide context for any kind of assistant bots that we're creating. For auxiliary knowledge dissemination for kids, it can be it can be a pretty good use case, for, as I earlier mentioned, for generation of pictorial context based on different, age ranges. Those could be used for generation of quick interpretations of Saki, if we can train our LLMs on, visual representations that are, specific to our use cases. But one of the other larger things that I want to talk about is, in terms of the AI ethics, they've been talking about this is an AI Oppenheimer moment. And I think, Sikhi has, Sikhi can be at the forefront of AI ethics. And, I talked about this in a TEDx talk last year, that, when talking about, languages and the context that they bring and how they can actually contribute. So I think we need, we need more participation, as AI, as AI ethics are being developed, and we need more Sikhi voices in it. And the last thing I want to point out is that, Panth should take this wave of growth. And, we also need Panthic entrepreneurs who are building at this edge. And, not just to build resources that, for Pugna or for indulgence, but for building resources that can fuel in. There are a lot of, I just recently visited, just like the same Virji was mentioning, Fatehgarh Sahib recently, and I look at the institutions and the state of the institution. It's in quite a bit of decay, and those are like Panthic institutions that were built, both the Banda Singh Bahadur College and the Guru Granth Sahib University, that are like, close to each other. So having those kind of, having Sikh entrepreneurs like build resources, riding this wave and building resources for the community to contribute to many of the projects that can come out of the community. So that is how I'm looking at this whole wave. Back to you, Prabhu Singh.
Hanji, sounds good. So, Paji, I'm going to ask you a question in Punjabi next, because there's actually a lot of comments, and I'm getting messages on WhatsApp as well. Can we provide some context in Punjabi? So, Paji, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਥੋੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ AI ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਜਦੋਂ ChatGPT ਲਾਂਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, ਕਾਫੀ ਫੀਅਰ ਸੀਗਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਜੌਬਸ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਣਗੀਆਂ, ਇਹਨਾਂ AI ਨੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਟੇਕ ਓਵਰ ਕਰ ਲੈਣਾ, ਰਾਈਟ ਐਟ ਦ ਸੇਮ ਟਾਈਮ ਜਦੋਂ ਹੁਣ ਗੱਡੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਆਟੋਨਮਸ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਗੱਡੀਆਂ ਆਪ ਚੱਲ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਫੁੱਲ ਸੈਲਫ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਐਂਡ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੈਪੇਬਿਲਿਟੀਜ਼। ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਰਟੀਫਿਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਸਿੱਖ ਪੰਥ ਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਆ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਅਡੈਪਟ ਕਰਕੇ? ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਐਂਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਨਿਓਰਸ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੰਥਕ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਇਤਿਹਾਸਕ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਨੇ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਡਿਕੇ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਸੋ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਲੈਵਰੇਜ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਪੰਥ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਪੰਥ ਦਾ ਹੋਰ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਣ ਨੂੰ? ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲਸ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੋਗੇ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਬੜਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈਗਾ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਪੰਥ ਮੇਰੀ ਲਿਮਿਟਿਡ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡਿੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੰਥ ਦਾ ਵਧਾਵਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਐਗਜ਼ਿਸਟੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਜੀਵਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਵਿਚਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਤੇ they are forming communities, they are building things ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਆ ਜਿਉਂ ਜਿਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਜਿਉਂ ਬਾਕੀ they becomes the enabler, they becomes the volley ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਸਟ ਲਾਈਕ ਹਰੇਕ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵੇਵ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਹਰੇਕ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਚੱਕਰ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਹਰੇਕ ਸਮੇਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਇੰਜਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਕਰਦਾ। ਕਰੰਟਲੀ ਵੀ ਆਰ ਸੀਇੰਗ ਲੋਟ ਆਫ ਦੈਟ। ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ AI ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਿਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਕਨੋਮਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰੇ ਆਸੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਵੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਆ। ਸੋ for different age ranges and for different ਕਿਹੜੀ ਫੇਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਜੇ ਉਹ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਈਬਰ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ, AI, ਬਲੌਕਚੇਨ ਇਹ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀਆਂ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਜੇ ਜਿਹਦੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਬਿਲਡਰ ਦੇ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਤੋਂ ਤੇ ਆਲਸੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਟ ਬਿਲਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਇੰਟੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਡੈਫੀਨੇਟਲੀ ਐਡਵਾਂਟੇਜ ਹੋਊਗੀ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਿਡ ਮੈਨੇਜਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੇ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਐਂਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਨਿਓਰਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਵਰੇਜ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਬਿਲਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਓਵਰਆਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਬੈਨੀਫਿਟ ਕਰਨ। ਇਨ ਟਰਮਸ ਆਫ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਸ ਹੋਣੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ। ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਹੁਣੇ ਰੀਸੈਂਟਲੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ, ਬੜੀ ਲਿਮਿਟਿਡ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਨ ਦਾ ਐਂਡ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਤੋਂ ਜੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਡ੍ਰੀਮ ਆ, these are all dreams within dreams, ਲੇਅਰਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਪਰ these are also ਉਹਨਾਂ ਡ੍ਰੀਮਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪਾਵਰਸ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਲਾਰਜਰ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਕਹੂੰਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਕਟਿਵਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੇ, ਉਹ ਘੱਟੋ ਘੱਟ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਰੱਖਣੀ ਬੜੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਆ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਇਹਨੇ ਕਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ AI ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੇਵ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਇਹਨੇ ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਕਰਨਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਡਰਾਈਵਿੰਗ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸੈਲਫ ਡਰਾਈਵਿੰਗ ਕਾਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ there are just maybe 5 years in will have a completely self driven ਨੇ ਟੈਸਲਾ ਵਾਲੇ ਵੀ ਕੰਪਲੀਟਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਬਟ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਲੀ ਦੂਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਸੋ ਪੂਰੀ ਟੈਕਸੀ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਪਰੇ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ ਟਰੱਕਿੰਗ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਰੱਖਣੀ, ਫਿਰ ਵੇਖਣਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਓਪਰਚੁਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈਵਰੇਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਲ ਵਰਕ ਕਰਨਾ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਤੋਂ, ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਤੋਂ ਮਨਟੇਕ ਵੀਰ ਨੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ, ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਹੈਡ ਦ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨਸ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਮਨਟੇਕ ਸਿੰਘ, would you like to add anything to that?
I mean, I think we covered it pretty good. I think number one awareness. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ just understand even ChatGPT will help ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਨਹੀਂ help ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, understanding limitations ਕੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, how can it help me level up ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈਗਾ, find that awareness, find out how it helps you, and if you need reach out to College Foundation, reach out to whoever technologist in your life, whatever young person in your life, find out how to help you in your day-to-day job, because we're already at the point day-to-day which ChatGPT and other tools, AI tools, can help you in your day-to-day come to up-level you and really help you in your day-to-day.
Sounds good. So I think the big message here is that while there's a lot of work that needs to be done with AI, making sure that we're not going into the large language models creating a Gurbani, but at the same time there could be real life applications of AI to Sikhi, right, for the betterment of the Panth. So I think that is definitely the case. And a lot of times when you talk about AI, and I mentioned this just a minute ago, is that there's a lot of fear, right? A lot of people fearing that it's going to take away jobs, it's going to do X, Y, and Z. A lot of companies are also riding this wave, right? As soon as ChatGPT was launched, you had like a number of cybersecurity companies pop up overnight, promising we can stop these attacks created by GPT, right? So naturally, as these companies are coming up, there's also going to be fear within individuals, and it's good to know what these issues are so we can stay on top of them. So I'm going to go over to Balwinder Penji. I know you've been sitting very quiet. So Balwinder Bhai, as a board member of Khalis Foundation, would love to hear from you. Why hasn't Khalis launched this GPT type of chatbot? Tell us the reasons behind that, and if there's any example that you want to use. And in general, if you could also talk about, you know, I don't want to say that we move slow, but at the same time, there are certain things that we do within the organization that tends to slow us down, right? Like, for example, we spend a lot of time making sure Gurbani is, there are no like laga matra de issue nahi hai, right? Let me just give this example, right? So previously, sikh2themax.com was one of the initial search engines, and many of the other websites basically scraped the website, and during the scraping process, it introduced a lot of typos, right? And Arvinder Paji was mentioning a lot of characters actually not even being in the Unicode character set. So we have to keep all of these things in mind. But as a board member, could you tell us about certain things that might slow the organization down and not allow us to launch these tools and new applications right away, right? Like what are some of those issues and how do we work around them?
So that's a great point. I think as individuals, we have we have our opinions, but when it comes to the org perspective, I have found myself so many times that there is a different kind of responsibility. And the responsibility comes in terms of, for example, all the applications that we have, right? Jay Sundar Gutka, to I know the same Vijay has said it's not the same as doing it from a Gutka, but we have 500,000 people jada on a month, they use our Sundar Gutka. So we have a responsibility. Yes, look what you started, right? So we have, and every Sunday, Sikhi to the Max gets used in gurdwaras all over the world, right? There's so much viewership. So there are certain things that even though we personally may have different stands on, from an org perspective, we are accountable to our Sangat. So there has to be checks and balances. The other point is we are also like a non-profit. We work with the contributions, the Swant contributions that come from the global Sangat. So there is another sort of accountability there that in some ways, if we look at our day jobs and Valley, we have different kinds of resources. The same kind of resources are not available to a non-profit organization. Right? And then at the same time, we want the same quality of engineering, the same tooling that we are used to in our day jobs, but we have to morph and slow down. And so that sometimes takes a lot of, we have to slow down because of that. Then the other thing, which these two are still understandable, right? Like constraints. The thing that becomes a big drain on energy is when Panthe conflict comes in, and number without times, we have found the leadership team just get sucked into things that is just a handful of people, 2 or 3 people. And so you have to be very careful on that front as well, right? Now, new technology, I think staying on the forefront, like all of you have captured, right? That we need to know what it can and cannot do. And then being responsible, like we would love to, spend all our time not maintaining old apps and just hacking on new ones. And I'm seeing the YouTube feed going through and people talking about ideas that we have talked about so many times, like Sikhi to the Max, and there should be audio and nobody should need to use a projector. But again, there's a lot of constraints that come in. The good part is that we do what we do, and sometimes it takes us longer, and there's a lot of due diligence, and we are slower. But our hope is that we keep serving Sangat, and not embracing new technology is not really an option and not really who we are. But we just need to be a little bit more responsible as we grow up as an org. But I would like to invite all those people who are on the YouTube channel and maybe not part of our foundation to please find some time, make it a weekly habit, 2 घंटे, 3 घंटे, 4 घंटे, come work with us. And I think if we all work together, we can do so much more for our community.
Sounds good. So actually, just a quick correction: the 500,000 is a weekly number. It's not monthly, right? So it's a massive impact, and I think technology has allowed these applications like Sikh to the Max by Share and Sundar Gutka by Khalis Foundation to allow people in certain areas to access Gurbani in a way that makes sense to them, right? So, for example, we have a lot of users that use Sundar Gutka primarily in Hindi, um, and they are living in other countries. Likewise, we have users reading in Russian, for example. So that's the type of impact Khalis has been able to make with this and these apps. So we're almost at time, just a few minutes left. I'm going to ask a few questions going back to Pai Tarsem Singh. So Pai Sahab, what ethical considerations should be taken into account when developing AI tools for Sikh communities? I know you've talked about Kachi Bani a lot, but what are some of these like basic principles we need to keep in mind as we are developing any application that parses Gurbani?
So it's a good question, and I think I'll go back to the Sundar Gurka. I wasn't trashing the application. I wasn't trashing the app. What I meant was, the guidelines around these things. There should be something we should be training our children about the guidelines. So, and it's answering your question to some extent. Is that when I've asked individuals, children, do they know how to do Sadaqah of Gurbani if they're holding it? They don't, and so that tradition will get lost. If you're not careful, the tradition gets lost. So I love IT. I love programming. I love computing. I love all that stuff, right? And development. But what I'm saying to you, I'm trying to be balanced to say. So how do we ensure the ethical parts, as you're saying, that they stay, and to do that you have to look. Gurbani hai again, I just want to emphasize the point. Gurbani has got that essence in it, what we call Amrit Ras. Amrit Ras, I challenge individuals to say, hey, to Amrit Ras to do Sikhi to the Max searches like that, It's not what it's for, It wasn't what it's developed for. So what I'm saying, and even when you make something electronic, you digital, if you hear Barney electronically, it's not the same as a Sikh sitting in front of you doing kirtan. It isn't that. It's not the same thing. And the thing that's actually lost from it, if you're just trying to understand it, and I think it's just an important, Gala, it might not be totally on your question, is that jira apna ek amrit rasya, ek darshanya, prakash jira hega, and there's anahad shabad. These are three. This is the essence of Gurbani. Those three things that are come through Hirde, it comes through Vasana, it comes through different things like that, and that's the traditions are already there about how you get to that and how we consume Gurbani. So going back to the ethical parts for a developer, what I'm saying is as the developers get younger and younger, and some of the traditions are fading and fading, they're not going to think about certain things, and I think that's not. It's for some of the generations who understood, how the things changed for them to be putting those ethics together. So like I say, a basic thing is to ensure that anything that we make that's electronic or digital is a supplement to our core Sikhi. It's not our Sikhi. It's not a replacement for our Sikhi. And again, when I talk about Nithanim, that's a daily routine, isn't it? And look at it is to Hindi, you'd have to be printing Gutke, getting them out to different languages, distributing them. I understand all of that things. I understand all of it. All I'm saying, there's a core element of Gurbani about how Kala Bhartadiya of Gurbani. And I'm not saying I'm an expert about Kala Bhartadiya, Kitab Bhartadiya, but I do know that certain things are taking you further away from that thing. That's what I guess I'm going to try and say. I think the other points, the other panelists can obviously talk a bit more about the ethics.
Sounds good. And we're almost at time. There was a question that I did want to take, and I apologize that Praveen for hasn't been able to speak just because of the echo issues. She would have done much. She would have done a much better job at hosting this. But next time we got to do this again. I think we can speak with each of you at a greater length, go into the deep introspection of this topic. But to sum it up and wrap this up, actually, would love to open it up to every panelist to unmute yourself and say a few words about AI or technology in general, and then we'll take it from there. So, Mantek Singh, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I think just to keep it brief, technology has the ability to have an outsized impact on the amount of effort that you put in, both on your personal lives and then also on our Panthik lives. And so for any technologists out there, I would implore them to get in contact with the people on this stream, get in contact with the College Foundation, and whatever this one you have, especially in the area of time and effort or development, put it towards your Panthik life and not just your professional life. Any software, tools, time that you can put towards your Panthik life can have a large outsized impact, and it's definitely worth doing. And even if you're not a technologist, working with generating the content to make a real Sikhi AI, collecting the content to make the Sikhi AI, moderating the content to make a real Sikhi AI that can be much more powerful than the tools that we have today and much more useful to the Panth. There's work across the spectrum of people across the world that can put towards that to make these things a reality.
Thank you. Balwinder Panji, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you so much, Mantek Singh. I really loved what you said. I will make a very specific ask. We have, and we did not really cover this, but we have a lot of young engineers, high schoolers, college, and young early in career who come and contribute at College Foundation and grow at College Foundation. If you are an experienced software engineer, right, please contribute this month. Come and mentor these upcoming software engineers. You will enjoy it. You will learn from them. You will be able to share your knowledge and also play around with new tech. So please come join us.
Awesome. Arvinder Paji.
I'll just I think great things have been said by Mantek Singh and Panji, but I will just add three of the points. The first one is that all tools are to be yielded for a reason. And so, limited to be a weapon, but not a crutch. That's important, as we yield AI. I think our participation has to be twofold. One is in the public LLMs and, the large public databases. But the other is also, as Mantek Singh mentioned, somebody who's not a technologist can simply participate in terms of generating content. One of the earlier questions was around why isn't the voice and text synchronization happening. Voice data is hard, and I do want to mention that the amount of work that College Foundation has been doing in the past year has just been instrumental. I've seen its impact all around, and so it's pretty amazing. What you guys have been able to do with just a few volunteers and the amount of limited resources that you guys have. So I would implore others who are listening, even if you're not technologists, there are ways you can help. Last thing I want to say is, for any minority community, AI can be a huge leverage. It is very important to understand where those leverages lie. Reach out to any of us here on the panel, or reach out to individual leaders within your communities, and they'll be happy to kind of help and advise based on your personal context. So I think it is the energy of this era. So use it to the best of your abilities.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's time. So we will wrap it up for today. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. Right? We are available on Slack, various social media platforms. You can follow College Foundation. Come join our Slack. You can find the link on any of our repositories. Most of our repositories are open source on GitHub, and you can find us there easily. Let's continue the conversation. Let's get in touch. If we can help in any way, or if you think you can contribute to Khalis in any way, we also have several shared charity sevadars on our Slack, so it's also a good way to touch base with them. Come on, let's join our team and let's join hands. And we will say Fateh now, and then hopefully see you all on a different topic in a different webinar. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.